Mr. Chair, that takes us to item number 19, which is the Charter County and Regional Transportation System surtax ordinance for roads.
Okay, and who will be leading the charge on this one?
All fingers are pointing at me, Mr. Chair,
Aren't you
so
lucky?
for your consideration is the Charter County Transportation surtax. This is the final, advertises the final public hearing on the surtax. This particular ordinance as a whole was previously advertised for a public hearing on February 18th of this year. At that time, the board chose not to adopt it after discussion and public comment for several changes to be made. Those changes were made, and what you have before you tonight is the final version based on comments that were heard at the February 18th public hearing and the board meeting at which the advertisement for this particular ordinance was placed on for tonight. So there were some changes based on your last meeting where we asked to advertise as well.
Okay. Is that it?
That's
Okay.
it.
Commissioner Byerly?
Well, we've covered this pretty extensively. If you want to get the ball rolling, I'm willing to put a motion on the floor. I would move staff's recommendation that we adopt an ordinance levying a 1% sales surtax for a period of 8 years to plan, develop, finance, construct, reconstruct, operate, provide capital improvements, and maintain county and municipal roads and bridges, bus systems, and bicycle and pedestrian projects, subject to voter approval, citizen oversight, and annual audit, and authorize the chair to sign.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I know, I guess let's get the questions from the board, and then I know that the chamber was here this morning and had some suggestions as well, so I'd like to hear from them. Commissioner Baird, and then do you have something else you'd like to say?
Yes, sir. I apologize.
And actually,
There was an issue raised that there was a discussion this morning that impacts Section 8, and the clerk's office noted this to me directly prior to coming in here. The way that it's written, the independent audit would be conducted by the oversight board, and per the discussion that the board had regarding the fact that independent audits are required by state law, and not wanting to duplicate that, a minor change in the language would satisfy that the board's intent on Section 8.
that would be the intent of my motion. Second, agree with that?
And I could read that what we proposed for that based on the clerk's office comment.
Please do.
And that would be Alachua County shall establish a citizens oversight committee which shall review an independent audit of expenditures of each local government's transportation sales tax proceeds annually, and the audit would be conducted in accordance with Section 218.39 of the Florida statutes. Which is the section that requires the independent audit of local governments and applies equally to municipalities and counties.
So the audit is not going to be part of.
It would be the independent audit
There
performed
is
by the clerk
independent-
pursuant to state law.
Right, it'd be the annual independent audit that is already being done by each municipality and the counties pursuant to state law.
And not part of the oversight committee.
Right, that they would review in making their findings and report.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to say something about this issue of providing transit to seniors. I think it's a service we are going to have to begin providing at some point, and I think the county should become involved in it. I'm not comfortable at this very, very late stage in the game rushing into a fairly elaborate proposal that involves starting an entirely new system. With a lot of unanswered questions. It's the kind of thing that should have been vetted by staff and considered substantially. If the city wants to do that with its share of the proceeds, more power to them. Again, I continue to say that the municipalities ought to be able to do whatever they want. On the basis of what I read the other day, I didn't listen to the meeting, but it seemed like the city seemed to be leaning towards the idea of trying to do it with the existing transit service somehow. If they do, that's something I think the county should consider providing service, contracting for services to provide that in the unincorporated county the same way that we do now with the regular RTS. And that we would need to identify what the most likely sites are, where we can get the most bang for the buck, how much we can afford to do. And I'm very open to a discussion about providing a level of funding commensurate with what was discussed here, but based upon some kind of analysis that we have time to consider, and that a more appropriate way to do it would be to contract with whatever provider they end up having independently outside of the surtax proceeds. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Baird?
Just one, actually only two concerns or questions. On the priority list, is there a chance of making any modification? Just wanted to bring to your attention on page 1 of 4, I believe, where it said Southwest 91st Street, and you have Southwest 91st Street, and they are not together, and it's obviously 91st Street from Archer, I believe, down towards 8th Avenue. And we had mentioned about, the cost savings of trying to pull those together. So since I saw that one, that would be one that we should probably take in consideration before we go ahead and vote on that officially.
I thought we already had
It's contiguous.
project list.
91st Street extension.
You voted on the project list to include it as exhibit, but because this is part of the ordinance, it's not adopted as part of the ordinance until you do that.
Okay.
It's the attached exhibit to the
Mr.
ordinance.
Chair, on that example, I think if you look at the screen here, these are the project. Jeff Hayes, Transportation Planning Manager. These are projects. Commissioner Baird is it's a southwest and a northwest. If I'm looking at the right projects.
No, you're looking at the wrong.
Okay.
Look at the very bottom one on
Oh,
the,
down here, 91st.
Very last one.
should that one be combined with the other one up above?
Dave Solanik, Public Works Director. This is a good opening for me to discuss what we would like to do as staff in terms of trying to save the taxpayer money as best we can, try to expedite the projects as best we can. Typically what we'd like to do, if this were approved by the public, is to start January 1st with 10 or so design contracts and start projects going in terms of design, because it takes so long to get through the design process. At least 6 months, probably more like a year if we've got full approval. And what we would like to do is that once one of these projects gets ready to go, we go. It's much harder to go one after the other. And in terms of this whole project list, this 8-year list, the first page of this document, we feel like if we did it that way, we'd be very comfortable in saying we could probably get all the way through this list of projects and maybe into the next page. If we went one at a time, we would slow the process down and we would cost more money. So we would ask to try to do the best we can in terms of our prioritization by saving money and saving time. Which means if we were to look at the Southwest 91st from Archer Road to Southwest 44th Avenue, somewhere in the middle of the list, and the project at the very bottom of the list, Southwest 91st from 24th to 8th, that might make sense to lump those two projects into one contract to do it at the same time. We would certainly bring this to your attention, and in the process, you would know that. But again, they're on that first page. It would make sense to try to do that because I think we could probably get economy of scale that way. So that was my pitch.
Well, Mr. Chair, that's kind of the homework that probably should have been done the last 4 years, and how many years we've been trying to put this list together, of combining them. Some of these are a little easier than others, such as 91st Street going from Archer down to 8th Avenue. The same way that some of the other ones have been combined and should have maybe have been thought that way to make sure we have the economies of scale, unless a road had been paved in a separate schedule. And then, of course, then it does belong in that number. So it'd be number 38 instead of number 24, because it did have different paving schedules, and just because they're together doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best way. But given that they're so close here, I think that these could be scrutinized a lot easier to determine which ones should be better if they are in the same condition, and if it's going to be done, that you go ahead and do it together. So that's why these lists are so important, and we've taken so much time to go ahead and put them together. But I just want to make sure that these are the lists that we're going to abide by, because one of the other things I want to just make sure is again, that modification and the change, and to make sure we do what we say we're going to do and not just be changing because it's a great idea or what is that criteria, because change is change. And one of the things that we've been looking at, and one of the things we discussed even this morning extensively, is making sure that we do what we say we're going to do, and that what we said we're going to do is very well vetted out and very well thought out, so that we can make sure that we feel comfortable with what we're going to be voting for. So if this is the list, and the list in the order in which it's going to be done, which should have been looked at from the very beginning, in that case, one of the items here that we want to increase, and only one change in this ordinance so far in terms of how it's written here, is to have that the project lists in terms of priority cannot be changed unless there's a supermajority. And if it is such a great idea, then it shouldn't be a problem to have that changed with a supermajority. And so if we say, the economies of scale are going to be great, we do require or request that this change be made. The supermajority says, yes, that is a good idea. Take it to, whichever other groups need to be addressed. But everything in here under 1A, I believe it is, under 1A should all be supermajority. And that way we know that it won't just be a simple change, and it will be something that is so obvious, so clear, that the supermajority or a total unanimous vote will be the answer. And if it is less than that, then it does need to be addressed much more in depth, and have some major changes to this ordinance, which really is not a good idea and would make it hard. So one change that I would request is to have line 5, the project set forth in Exhibit A shall, to the greatest extent practicable, be accomplished in the order set forth. The Board of County Commissions may, but can only be changed by a supermajority approve expenditures for listed projects. So that would be supermajority, and to the greatest extent. So that change right there would then make it a lot more difficult to just change that list. And if it's so obvious of a good reason, that it would be a supermajority or unanimous that you'd probably get with that vote. So that would be my request to make that change.
Okay. Commissioner Barley.
Well, I'm glad this came up, because actually this was what I was going to bring up this morning and didn't, on the advice of the attorney, was this issue of the difference between adding and deleting projects and changing the priorities. I agree that we should make it as close to impossible as we can to add or delete projects, whatever that takes.
To add?
Add or delete projects. I'm not as strong on that as Commissioner Barrett is when it comes to the order. Mr. Sherlanick just gave a good example of why we need some flexibility on the sequence of projects. I can think of others. Grant funding may become available, or maybe funding that we're counting on to complete a project may go away. There could be a storm or a hurricane that blows out a road that might move it up higher in the priority. Things can happen that simply have it make sense. I'm less firm on that on the roads than I am with the bicycle pedestrian projects, where I know we're going to need substantially more flexibility to do what's right by the public than the road situation, because there are so many unanswered questions still as to which projects make the most sense to move forward with first. I'm open to what the board wants to do with the road part of it, but I think our staff has made a pretty good case. But on the bike ped part of it, I would ask that we, again, continue to allow staff considerable flexibility to use the sequence of the projects that are on the list in the way that's going to get the most work done by the end of the 8 years.
Mr. Hayes.
Mr. Chair, one issue that staff has looked at, and we've had some discussions with the representatives of the chamber because they brought this issue up to us today as well, is really the kind of flexibility that Mr. Solenic was asking for. We're really talking about the public should have a good feeling about that first page, that these are our top priority projects. And then as we go down the list, I think the concern is, do we take a project at the very bottom of the list and move it up above one of those projects? So there could be something along the lines of, we're not going to move on to the second page of the project list until we've completed or at least begun design on all of the projects, or met one of the qualifications that we already have there in Exhibit A. Because that's certainly not staff's intent, and we want to make it as plain, and I don't think it's the county's intent, that the project list that we have before you we had a set methodology, and we've tried to be as transparent as possible throughout this process, that's how we arrived at that project list. Staff stab it here thought we accomplished that, but if there's another level, we can discuss it further.
Mr. Chair, if it will gain Commissioner Baird's vote, I will agree to modify my motion to require a supermajority vote for road projects, because I think staff could probably do a pretty good job explaining why we need to change something, and we'd accept that, right, as long as we don't apply that to the bicycle pedestrian list.
How many projects were on that list?
The bicycle pedestrian projects?
Yeah.
A lot. I don't have the number right in front of me, but
We deliberately added more than we
yeah, we deliberately added more than we thought we could accomplish with the last action the board took on that issue. And the way that the ordinance is structured, that's easy to accomplish because we have all of the language about reprioritization and deletion separately, dealing with the two different lists separately. So we can deal with that relatively simply.
Is the seconder okay with that? I can't remember who seconded it. Chuck?
38, Mike. President.
Okay, Commissioner Baird.
It would just be, and thanks for allowing that, because if it is such a great idea, and if it is a special situation, a circumstance, a hurricane or something, of course you're going to have a majority plus one or a supermajority or even unanimous again. And if it is such a great idea, it's going to be an easy decision for the supermajority to make or unanimous vote here. So that's why I think that set in there would just make it a little stronger. So, and as far as the bike list, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have supermajority, but hey, if that's going to be a simple majority, 5%, I'm not going to go ahead and fall on my sword on that one, and that's okay.
Any further comments? Yes, ma'am.
On the supermajority, on the change to this language, I would need direction as to whether the language that was approved for the interlocal agreements that went out had the simple majority language, which we can change to supermajority, but it also stated that if that occurred, that there was no requirement to go to all 9 cities for that issue, prioritization. So I just want to...
Okay.
I just, I don't want the board not to be aware of that particular point. So I would change it to supermajority in the interlocals, but leave the exception that it would have to go before all 9 cities, because in that case you could look at potentially losing grant funding and other issues. If you're asking to reprioritize because of one of these listed conditions and there's a time certain for funding, other funding opportunities, that would significantly hamper those issues.
Thank you, and I'm okay with that, so I'll leave my motion.
Well,
I think that, that doesn't, the going to the 9 municipalities, if you're changing the ordinance itself, not the priority list.
It's
So
for
just-
changing addition or deletion.
Exactly, not for reprioritizing.
Correct. I just want to make
Yes.
sure that that's still
Correct.
the intent.
Mm-hmm.
well, I heard what the chamber said this morning, and I came up with a way that I thought would semi-accommodate staff. Because I think, as the discussion went today, I think today is about setting the bar, and what we do in this 8-year term will set the standard for future years. And if we show the citizens that we're going to do exactly what we said we're going to do, it will make it easier down the road, and perhaps it will some of the agreement, trust, whatever, will be there, and we won't have the kind of difficulties that we've had in the past. So I heard what they said, and what I'm suggesting is different, but it sets a very higher standard to if we want to change something. I think that I'll read it and then and we can go from there. But I think it allows opportunity. Some of the things that were said before, but what it is, there will be a priority list from the cities and the counties, and as far as the county is concerned, that is, if an individual project is to be moved by 5 positions because significant savings will be realized, then it doesn't have to go through the process that I'm going to describe in a second. And a move greater than 5 spots would also be possible without going through a review process if there were outside monies that were available other than the sales tax money. So that addresses the time certain aspect that the attorney was putting forth. But if there's a case where there's a greater movement, say like the Southwest 91st that you were talking about, that would be more than 5 spaces, that it would be based upon that there were going to be significant savings as a result. And the first step of the process would go to the advisory board. The advisory board would make a recommendation to the county, the oversight committee. They would make a recommendation. Then it would come to the board. The board would need to have a supermajority, and then I think that we could still go to the other municipalities and get a simple majority from there, but it would be a supermajority of the municipalities, because if it makes sense, I don't see that it's going to be a real issue. And I think that, and the reason, I know this is complicated, I know that this is difficult, but I think that we need to make it as difficult this first go round. And if nobody's interested in it, I've got the actual verbiage here if somebody wants to see it. But if there's any interest, I think that at a minimum, what Commissioner Baird's talking about, but I really think that the bar would be set higher as far as we've got the caveats. I think that the staff is going to know well in advance which 2 projects look like it could be moved, and they could start the ball rolling as far as making those making the rounds. And I don't think that it would have a tremendous effect, and I don't think that it would have the effect that we wouldn't get the projects done. And all it is to do is to try to buy as much credibility as possible. So, Commissioner Barley.
Are you suggesting that, and I don't know why you picked 5 spots, it seems a little arbitrary to me.
It was. It sounded like a good number, truthfully.
Okay.
We could have made it 12, and then it pretty much would have included everything on the list. But
well, I'm trying to find a way to work this in. It kind of seems like we're complicating things, and I just want to make sure there's a good reason why we're complicating. And if you're suggesting that if staff makes a recommendation for whatever reason, and I don't want to start specifying the reasons because there could be many we're not considering tonight, you're saying that they would come to the board with their recommendation, we would consider it, then we would refer it to the oversight committee. The oversight committee would make a recommendation back to us on the basis of what? Actually,
we'd go to the oversight committee first and then come back to us. That savings, that there would be some, pressing reason, economies of scale, savings of revenues, all those things. And it's just for at least this one time, this first time, so that we can demonstrate to people that it is not going to be easy to change things. And Mike, I had the discussion. I think that it certainly makes sense to group the whole projects being accomplished during the 8-year as in total, and that if we accomplish it, we've done what we said. But I did hear earlier that while that logic I think is very sound, it doesn't necessarily resonate with everybody. So I was trying to come up with something that I felt would not incredibly hamper, not make it impossible, but it would set a pretty high bar to change.
Well, you're not suggesting that the county commission would yield its authority to make the decision, right? The county commission
No.
would still make the decision. So
No.
I don't really understand how
Well,
we're
it
making
may-
the bar
it-
any
well,
higher.
it's-
We're taking more time,
We're-
and we're expanding the role of the oversight committee substantially. It now becomes kind of a policy-making body to
No.
some extent. I disagree. Like, I think this involves policy. They will use their judgment. They will listen to staff's presentation, and they will decide whether or not they think that it's justified to move it somewhere in the priority list, and I think that's our job. So the part that concerns me the most, I don't really think we're raising the bar much. We are requiring an additional step, but the Board of County Commissioners is still going to hear the same presentation from staff and use our judgment about whether or not we think it should move. I'm not even sure that would be the appropriate committee to send that to if we were going to. We have more transportation-oriented committees that deal with these things and have transportation-oriented staff. I'm not suggesting we do that, but if we were going to, there are other committees that seem more appropriate to me. I'd like to keep it clean, simple, have the oversight board be the oversight board. Their job is to make sure the law is followed, and I don't want to complicate it by giving them policy authority as well.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
just
Turner?
my opinion.
Mr. Chair, you noted the issue of priority lists for the cities and that the cities, the 5 position, I just wanted to note that in the ordinance, the way it has been consistently drafted from its outset, this is probably the 4th version, it started with Mr. Wagner, there has been no limitation on the cities, nor has there been any indication on how they would have to draft their lists or use their funds. So if the board now desired to place a limitation or require the city's list to be in a priority order, and that there would have to, and how the city would spend that money, and a change in a priority up to 5 spaces, all those issues would now we'd have to go back to the interlocal that we approved the draft of at the last point in time, require that as cities, and provide some provisions in the ordinance limiting the city's use, because right now we're not limiting. Municipalities are free to use it in any lawful manner.
Okay. Thank you. Mike, you done? Susan?
I do commend your intentions, Mr. Chair, because I agree. Again, the least amount of change possible, the better. And I think we're all going to know that going in and from the very beginning. Just going ahead and at least making it the supermajority for whichever number it comes in. I just think that if it's a good idea, it's a good idea, and the supermajority says it's fine. I do like the idea of sending it to the oversight committee for point of view, very similar to what we have with the DRC, I believe. They
makes decisions.
well, in that case, that's a bad example. But I know where they've made decisions and we have not accepted them when they disapprove.
Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission,
That
then,
would be
that's
the
right.
Planning
The Planning Commission, sorry. It was the Planning Commission, where they give a point of view and we take it or we don't take it. I mean, it just depends on what we decide. Boards or a lot of other groups give us their point of view. I think that at least having them review any change is a good step in the right direction, but not necessarily have any type of requirement before we, as a supermajority, go ahead and make any type of modification in the priority list of where it actually goes. So I believe that just keeping it with a simple majority with the Oversight Committee's point of view would be a great, I guess, compromise, or at least still make it strong, but not limit it and make it so cumbersome and with so many different 5 or 6 or how many of that goes. I think it just adds a little bit more to the confusion, but we appreciate that.
Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the supermajority vote would accomplish everything that I think we're trying to accomplish here. I don't want to complicate this. I don't want to make this difficult for citizens to understand what is going on. The oversight board was basically, from my understanding, is supposed to make sure that the expenditures are being spent the way they're supposed to be spent on certain projects and off of a list. And I pray to God that none of the list changes at all, that they stay the way they are. But there should be some flexibility here, especially with the small municipalities, especially with grant funding and stuff like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. But to sit here and to give my authority as a county commissioner to a board doesn't make sense to me. I'm just sorry. I can't accept that. We're the one putting it on the referendum. We're the one asking the citizens to consider it. Then we ought to have the gumption to say whether to change your list or not. And if we got to have a supermajority, so that means we got to have 4 people out of 5 make that decision. So why would we spend time and waste time to send it to a committee, then a committee looks at it and bring it back to us? That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that's just like earlier, you're saying that folks don't trust us with ad valorem taxes or anything like that, but they trust us there with ad valorem taxes, but they don't trust us with a surtax. That doesn't make sense to me. If you don't trust me, if you don't think that I'm making the right decision with the ad valorem taxes, then it's time for you to vote me out of office. If you don't like what I'm doing with a surtax, likewise. These are tax dollars, period. I don't see a difference in them, really. We have fiduciary responsibility, and those fiduciary responsibilities I take seriously. But to be questioned that we would do something different with a surtax than we do with ad valorem taxes, that's an insult to me. I really think that we're making this more complicated than it really is. I want it to happen, but the way we sit here and we continue to debate little minor stuff, this is minor stuff to me. The big question is, will the people support it? Will they go out and vote for it? From what I heard, it has been done twice. It's been sent to the citizens twice to make that decision. And both times they said no. So why are we going to continue to put doubt, sit here and debate an issue? What I thought was going to happen tonight, that we might tweak the language in the ordinance and pass the ordinance. I think that we're going too deep in the weeds here. I'm not an attorney. I don't write ordinances. I take trust in our county attorney to bring a document to me. If I see, like Commissioner Baird said, supermajority, I accept that. But to sit here and then change the language over oversight board to review some changes, I disagree with that, folks. Let's move this down the road. Let's get it on the ballot. Let's get the people to vote for it. Let's stop playing games with it. It's like I got in it what I want in it. I don't need that in it. Get this in it. That doesn't make sense to me, folks. That's what it sounds like we're playing. Let's just agree to the simple facts that there's a supermajority. It has to have 4 votes to change anything in this ordinance. And I say again, I hate repeating myself. Say it again. I hope that the list does not change. But if there's some efficiencies that can come out of it, it still has to have 4 votes, folks. And it should not have to go to a committee for us to wait till that committee meets and come back, where it can come straight to this board that actually set this thing in motion. So I don't believe in giving my authority away when I can make a decision. and so, I'm getting older and I'm getting more patient because I really know parliamentary procedures and I can call a question at any point, but I don't want to do that because then that cuts off debate and that cuts off citizen comments. But we've discussed this in essence earlier about the committee and the oversight board. To then come tonight to do it again, man, is that redundant. And that doesn't make sense to me. At this point, I just hope that we get citizen comments and move forward and vote for this. And let's stop playing word games here. Thank you.
Commissioner Hudson.
I need to play a little word game here, and that is...
Is this the Oxford comma?
No, this is not about the Oxford comma this time. On page... Well, we have this Exhibit A, and the title says Expected Completion Years 1 through 8. And I think we should strike the years 1 through 8 from that. And on the next page, it says Other Eligible Projects, years 9 through 12, and then it's followed by another one, 13 through 16. And I realize these titles are left over, but one of my big concerns is not that we won't do the projects in the order, but that people will, for instance, along Lakeshore Drive, along Tuscaloosa Boulevard, along all these other projects that are listed, will say, yeah, I'm going to vote for this because, look, my stuff's on the list. And in reality, these things ought to be titled Other Eligible Projects Unlikely to be Funded, or something like that. Because if we don't, then the truthiness issue that people, or the trustiness issue that people are worried about, will, in 8 years, they'll come back and say, all these things were on the list, you didn't do them. Where were you? Why'd you waste the money? And so my concern is about, we've way overlisted the number of projects that are likely to get built, and we've improperly labeled them. So my suggestion would be changing Other Eligible Projects and then dash unlikely to be funded for both the ones on page 3 and 4.
I don't know about the unlikely to be funded. I would, I don't know whether I agree with that one, Hutch. And I see your point, but I think that, if we can wordsmith it a different way, like potential projects with additional, if there is funding.
It's not clear in here what's going on with those lists.
9 through 12.
Well, and if there's a way that we can, however we want to do it, as far as if we want to say projects, and it should be projects with to be completed with anticipated funding, and then up to some point potential projects to be completed if funding is if there are additional dollars, something along those lines. So because it is possible that some of these other projects are going to get done.
Would you agree that in an 8-year ordinance we shouldn't be describing projects as years 9 through 12? Because that's what's in our table right now.
What flexibility do you think we need, if not 8?
Well, no, I don't mind a few more projects. What I object to is calling it years 9 through 12 in an 8-year ordinance. Then, to me, that almost says we're never going to do these because we legally we can't.
Well, we've done it with the bicycle portion.
Yeah,
Well, we've mislabeled these things in the table. Is my point.
they're not mislabeled.
Mr. Chair, I don't care how we label that page. I don't have an opinion. If you have wording that's more acceptable to you, that's okay with me. I don't think
Well,
I don't
I'm
think it's gonna make
suggesting
one
other
bit of
eligible
difference.
projects. Here's my concern is everybody, there's an advocate for every one of these projects down here. Every one of these projects is going to get lobbying to move them, just the way we say we don't want to do it. But nevertheless, there's going to be pressure, if not on this board, on future boards. And we have not really made much of a distinction other than just different pages, different
Well-
years. Nowhere in the definitions, nowhere does it say.
But we've just taken some pretty strong step to indicate that we're going to try to follow the priority, unless there's extraordinary circumstances such that 4 of the 5 of us have to agree to change it, and we're building that into the process, the information we're going to take to the public. We're doing everything we can to follow this prioritization. And so if there's 12 years worth of projects and 8 years worth of tax, do the math. But again, if you have a better title,
You don't think anybody that's on these lists is going to come back disappointed in 8 years and saying, how come you didn't get to
of course
me?
they will. They're going to do that anyway. They're going to do that anyway, and I doubt any of them will have read the heading that you're describing. Not one of them. But again, if you want to change the heading, what would you? Not likely to be constructed sounds a little flippant.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can come up with something better than that. While just think about it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
staff could suggest other eligible projects if funding is available.
I'm fine with that.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. We have a motion with one modification. It's open to the public. Anybody who would like to speak, this would be the time to do
Mr.
so.
Chairman, I'd point out one very minor issue in the motion. You took action earlier today to name the surtax ordinance, and there's actually a title right now that just says title. So that needs to be.
Yeah, I want to reopen that whole title issue. Let's talk about that, okay? Okay, it's a joke. It's a joke. Yes, it was a joke. What did we agree to?
Moving Alachua County forward.
That's in my motion.
Okay.
How about a comma?
Depends on where you want to put it.
Yeah.
Ms. Conish?
Mr. Chair, Jim Conish, if you will indulge, I'd like to take a look at why we're here today asking for $250 million in additional taxes. In 1978, there were 78 people sitting in Alachua County Jail. In 2000, you did a one-year sales tax, raised $27 million. You built a criminal courthouse twice as big as the courthouse that was constructed in 1978 just for criminal cases. In the lead up to that, your jail population hit about 1,400, which means your jail population has increased 25 times faster than your general population. Your sheriff, your prosecutor, your public defender, court services, the whole apparatus that keep us safe consumes about 2/3 of your budget. Municipalities like Newberry, for years, I don't know if they still do this, annexed an area bigger than the city of Gainesville, full of enclaves and serpentine-like finger areas, including Florida Rock, and provided no police protection and got free service from the sheriff. Other municipalities have similarly abused the system and have artificially lower millages as a result. So, therefore, your $1 billion investment in county roads went to hell due to gaming of the system and a criminal justice system that's essentially taken us hostage, with a lot of duplication between the sheriff, GPD, UPD. You add up UPD, GPD, the sheriff, the local police departments, hundreds of millions of dollars. Overlap, duplication, turf battles. They're ready for Armageddon. They're beating up on law-abiding citizens to get the tickets, get the revenues. Waldo is a prime example. So, therefore, you're coming to us for $250 million additional taxes, which is a drop in the bucket in juxtaposition to the backlog in the roads. Finally, we started off with a grid road system in the city of Gainesville. We abandoned that, and we built cul-de-sac neighborhoods on farmland out to the west. The arterial roads converge on the university. The right-of-way would cost billions of dollars to expand them. The whole system was flawed from the very beginning. Joe and Cindy at the Magnolia Plantation Bed and Breakfast explained that to me in the 70s. There is no fix to it. There is no bypass because of San Falasco and Paynes Prairie. So your deteriorating system was flawed from the very beginning. So I hope the voters on the third time around approve this, but until we really drill down and address how we got here, we will not fix our roads or our transportation system with any amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Conish, just one thing. I think the population of the jail is closer to 900 plus.
It was at 1,500 at one point, and I haven't been here for 10 years. And I appreciate that progress, because at the rate we were going to be 2,000.
Yep.
Thank you for reducing it.
Okay, anyone else? Reverend Thorpe.
Mr. Chair, and to the commission, Kevin Thorpe, candidate for the County Commission District 4. I support the idea of making certain that it requires a supermajority vote before there be a change to the priority list. And to Commissioner Hutchinson's point on being able to define what would occur within a certain number of years. With projects that we looked at that the Chamber presented from other cities, one of the thought processes was that by earning the public trust of doing a sufficient job with the initial projects, that our ultimate goal would be to get the same level of funding for additional years once the 8 years expires. So I think the idea of the public being aware that this isn't a one-shot deal, that if we're able to do it successfully within this first 8 years, maintain that level of public trust, that we could come back and ask for it again so that we could further fund projects that are already on the priority list. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Voss, how are you this evening?
Very well, thanks. I always enjoy coming and having an opportunity to be before the commission. As representative of City of Hawthorne, Ellen Voss, city manager, I'm surprised the other surrounding municipalities aren't here for this because it's very important. We appreciate the work that you're doing on it, and we're glad to see it's moving forward. Thank you.
How's the bypass coming? The fixing the tracks.
The detour? I don't know. I think we're all pulling our hair out. The case in point for the conditions of our road, we probably had a couple of thousand cars and semi-tractor trailers come through downtown Hawthorne over the weekend. And DOT promised us that they would detour it and not come through downtown Hawthorne. So I asked where our money is to repair the potholes that have formed, and they said, well, we don't have any more money. So anyway, road surtax is very, very important, and I hope they have the railroad tracks fixed by tomorrow evening. That's what they're promising us.
Commissioner Bradley, to that.
Yeah, to this very point, and I don't want to sidetrack us. I just would ask Mr. Schlanik to stick around after we deal with this, because I would like to ask you for more information about this. We've been getting some emails and letters. Did y'all get the letter from the people who are upset about it coming to Cross Creek?
No.
Okay. I would just like a little bit more information on whether or not we had any voice in that at all. I think I know the answer, but if you wouldn't mind sticking around, and I'll ask about it then.
Mr. Chair, FDOT promised detours, and the detours were for semi-tractor trailers on 441 and car traffic on 325. So that was the detours they posted and promised, but they did not follow through on their promises. So.
Well, and I know that we got a something from DOT outlining the detour, and I think they said in there was 17 miles additional miles. So I have a feeling that's probably why you're getting so many people through downtown Hawthorne.
But it's
Yes.
bad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Ms. Glendenning, how are you this evening?
So far. I think that everyone recognizes that passing this tax is very important. It's very important that we get our roads fixed up. But when I went to the transportation yesterday, I didn't hear anybody talk about supermajorities and all of this. It all came down to trust that if we are going to, if someone's going to come and choose, I'm going to tax myself, is this group going to fix the roads, or is it somehow going to get distributed? And you have got to be able to communicate that. And I know it's complicated. I know making your the wording of the referendum, it's important and so on, but that doesn't communicate to the large majority of people the difference between an ad valorem tax is you're used to it. You're getting it all the time, and yeah, we'll vote for someone else if we think that they're going to spend our money better. But here you're asking me to say I am going to pay, and I don't know how much it's going to be for me because I don't know how much I spend per year, but it's you're asking me if I want to tax myself, and if I'm going to tax myself, I have to believe that you seven are going to use that money to fix the roads. Now, a big part of that money is going to Gainesville, and I don't know what control you have over Gainesville, and in the past, with the biomass contract, well, that's not us, that's someone else. Oh, the homeless center, well, that's not really us, that's someone else. And it's true. It was somebody else's fault, but unfortunately in this community, you're the only deliberative body that people have any trust in. And it's not an individual. It's not that I don't trust you or I don't trust you or I don't trust an individual. It's that when you come together, you're not showing me, rather than a lot of complicated stuff, you need to say, here's a map of Gainesville. Here's the roads we're going to be fixing first. Here, the first year. Here's the roads we're going to be trying to fix the second year. Here's the roads that we're going to try to fix the third year. It's got to be sold to the people so they say, I can see the roads. They're not going to worry about supermajority. They're not going to understand any of that. I don't understand any of that. And we are relying on you, and it's because you're the only deliberative body. As Bruce, he's not here tonight, as Bruce Nelson said, it's like going from day to night. When you come here, you can talk. You have you sort of think that you all are listening. You go to the city, you don't know what they're doing up there. You don't get a feeling that they're listening at all, and you don't feel that their methodology for talking is deliberating at all. They're just looking at little minor points, little rules, what have you. That is not going to give me the faith that I'm going to say, yes, I'll tax myself. If you all can come up with a map, and here's the roads, and I don't know what you can do about Gainesville. I mean, I don't particularly worry about the small little municipalities around, but I do worry about Gainesville. One, I live here, but Gainesville, as goes Gainesville, that's how Alachua County is going to go. Now, if Hawthorne doesn't do something, that's not going to destroy Alachua County. If Trenton doesn't do something, that's not going to hurt Alachua County. But if Gainesville doesn't maintain its roads, it's Alachua County, not just Gainesville that's going down. It's all of Alachua County that's going down. So, true, it's not your fault, but you're the only ones left that people can trust to say, what is the county going to do? And I believe that the county has to take some concern over the homeless center, take some concern over the biomass contract, whether we're going to do bus rapid transit. Because if you don't exhibit any concern, then I don't have faith to say, yes, I'm going to go ahead and tax myself. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glendenning. Anyone else? Good evening, Ms. Martinez.
Debbie Martinez. Well, Mr. Glendenning said it very well, but I too realize that repairing our crumbling city streets and county roads are a serious issue. And, you know, there are some concerns, but I'll put it in as simply as I can. Last time the voters were asked to tax themselves to fix our roads in 2011, they said no. It failed for many reasons, trust being the big one. I disagree with Commissioner Byerly, and it's not about, them not trusting you. So this is not about you. It's just the comments that you had made earlier today when you stated that, when Mr. Byerly stated that he felt that it was more about citizens disagreeing with commissioners than distrusting them because commissioners were elected. Because I just didn't, understand that statement, agree with it at all. All one needs to do is go door to door during campaign season, and you will get an earful from citizens about their distrust for elected officials. Many of them don't know a county commissioner from a city commissioner, and many of these people have multiple degrees behind their name. It's just that they're busy working and caring for their families. However, they do know that elected officials approved or championed a 30-year biomass contract obligating them, GRU customers, to pay more than 3 times the market rate for electricity, creating a hardship for them, their family, and our local businesses. They do not care whether it was a county commissioner or a city commissioner when it comes to failed policies that have a negative impact on our community. Citizens know that you will probably raise their property tax if this surcharge tax fails once again. But they believe that commissioners have failed to be good stewards of their dollars. I want to put, oops, excuse me. Is this overhead working?
It will.
Earlier today, I believe I heard Commissioner Byerly make this statement. In the 12 years that I've been on the county commission, there has not been a single instance in which government did not follow through on a promise. Really, hearing a statement like this is the evidence. Citizens need to hear. Is all the evidence that citizens need to hear, not to trust you. In time, I hope that this will improve because this is really an important issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to respond. My name was mentioned repeatedly, and my words were taken out of context and very unfairly, I think. So I'm going to respond. I'm going to respond, Ms. Martinez, to what you had to say. First of all, the context for the last quote up there, if you listen to the entire statement, we were talking about tax referenda, and I mentioned people trusting county government with tax referenda and money to be spent the way it's supposed to be spent, which was the context of the discussion. We've had Wild Places Public Spaces, Alachua County Forever, 1 cent, one penny 1 year for the courthouse during the 12 years, 14 years that I've been on the county commission. Every single penny accounted for, every promise kept. There's not been one instance of anything that would warrant mistrust on the part of the public about how county government has spent their money when we told them what we were going to do. The same thing is true for the nickel gas tax, which the board adopted itself and was not approved by the voters, but exactly the criteria that we adopted for the nickel gas tax was followed. Every penny is accounted for. It was all spent in accordance with what we said. So I would challenge you, if you can, to rebut that.
Well,
don't just intimate,
okay, well,
in fact, you guys have lied and broken your trust with the public, unless you can back it
what
up.
I said
You
was,
asked the question, let her answer.
okay. What I was saying, from what I heard you say, it just sounded absurd to me because there have been times that you did not keep your trust. So it just sounded a little absurd to me. But thank you for clarifying the way you meant it.
Okay. Anyone else? You've been patient. Good evening.
Good evening to you all. My name is Mabel Blake. I was looking at your surtax here, and I don't see anything with County Road 236 to fix it at all. Is this just a sidewalk that you're talking about in reference to 236 in High Springs?
I thought it was.
Mr. Chair, it's third project on the list.
Where would that be? US 441 to I-75.
Yeah.
.3, but that's just a sidewalk. That's not the
No,
road.
that's just
Is that the road?
only 0.3 of it is going to have sidewalk. The rest of it is going to be completely widened and
4.3 miles.
Okay.
resurfaced.
So that's the road of resurfacing that.
It's just that there's only going to be 0.3 of a mile of a sidewalk constructed
Okay.
on that segment.
Okay, so it's going to go to the interstate, from 441 to the interstate resurfacing.
Correct.
And I'm glad to see that. Thank you.
Sure thing.
And also on the fact that we're still working on our special assessment. You will be seeing me again, probably on July the 8th, whenever they get all the information to you for your support in reference to that. You'll be getting more information on that.
Thank you very
I'll
much,
be
Ms.
back.
Blake. All right, we look forward to it. Thank you for your hard work. Anyone else? Ms. Glendenning, you've had your shot. Thank you. Mr. Latham?
Mr. Chairman, Kamal Latham, Vice President for Public Policy, Gainesville Area Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber, as you know, represents over 1,100 organizations, for-profit and not-for-profit organizations, and collectively they employ over 70,000 individuals. We are an aggregator of voices, cares, and concerns of individuals that span a number of different spectrums. And one of the key issues that we want to focus on here, Mr. Chairman, is right over your left shoulder.
Behind you is the American flag, and there are two words that are underneath the seal: we trust. Trust is extremely important to the electorate. Trust is extremely important to the business community. Without a certain level and threshold of trust, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, for any surtax initiative to get passed. There have already been several attempts to pass a surtax dealing with transportation, and they have failed. Other surtaxes have succeeded, but when it has come to transportation, there has been a certain concern or a distrust or a disagreement that the electorate has had, and it has not succeeded. We at the Chamber believe that something different needs to happen in order to get a different result. What we humbly put forward, Mr. Chairman, is that one of the key things is having, as we said earlier today, a meaningful citizens oversight committee. There are two aspects to that. The one that was discussed at length was having a independent audit to be issued by the committee. Another aspect of that is having the committee have some say if there's going to be any attempt for having a change of the prioritization of the lists. To that extent, Mr. Chairman, we rise in support of the suggestion that you have put on the table about having some bandwidth by which county staff could make some changes to the list of priorities, and then having certain conditions, such as if extra funds come in, federal funds, state funds, what have you, that makes it much easier to do a project later on the list, move it up on the list. That's a very prudent thing to do. Having a rank-ordered priority of those projects, 1 through 31, certainly will communicate to the voters that there is a certain posture that the board is taking to show that there is a very specific direction and intention of the order by which these projects should be done. Now, there needs to certainly be some flexibility to facilitate feasibility in case for engineering purposes or for additional funds that may come in, that you may need to have some flexibility. So, Mr. Chairman, we rise in support of your proposal, and then having the supermajority to be in place at the county, and then along having a supermajority of all the different commissions of the municipalities, although they may only need to have a simple majority vote. And so we would hope that all of the members of the board would adopt your suggestion, and that the ordinance would be modified as appropriate. And we hope that this is something that can be agreed upon. We think this is the right way forward. We thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of the commission for having a very serious debate and discussion about a very important issue that is really affecting people all throughout the county. There's a great opportunity to do something different, and we would be excited at the Chamber if there is something that is put forward that is supportable. But we would have a difficult time supporting an initiative, and the business community would have a difficult time supporting an initiative that does not have a meaningful citizens oversight committee to be in place. And two aspects of that: an audit and having some say if there's going to be a change in the prioritization of a rank-ordered list. So that's what we humbly put forward this moment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Latham. Anybody else? Okay, Commissioner Chestnut.
I'm not going to get into it. What I just heard, there's no sense in really voting for this. This thing is going to die. You know, if the chamber is going to make a hardline position that, I disagree with what was just said. So, but if you're going to take a hardline position, you know, it doesn't make sense for me to even vote for this. To be honest with you, because I don't think it's going to be productive. I think we're sending the wrong message to citizens. I mean, You know, if we're going to have a champion, and if the chamber was going to be the champion, it can't be all the chamber way, and it can't be all of the county commission way, and it can't be all of the city of Gainesville way or the municipality's way. It has to be some compromise. And if we're not going to compromise, and if we're not serious about this tax, we're just wasting our time, and we're wasting the citizens' time. And, you know, we've debated this issue earlier today. It was 2 o'clock, almost 2 o'clock when we got out of here. Now it's after 8. It might be 9 or 10 o'clock before we leave tonight. This is something simple. All we have to do is put it on the ballot, get the people to vote for it. You know, the question I was going to ask Mr. Chair, are we going to have, if we go forward with this ordinance, will the county commission put out a fact sheet for citizens to know how the money is going to be spent and all of that kind of stuff? I think it's going to be important that folks have facts and not fictions. And so facts are very, very important, that we have a fact sheet that citizens can look at and know the truth in terms of what will happen with the surtax. But to sit here and make a hardline statement like that just was made, I just think it's unfair, and that's not the way I do business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Mr. Fay?
Mr. Chair, just wanted to state that if the board does in fact pass this ordinance tonight, staff will begin an extensive education program for the citizens. We'll probably have something posted on the website within a week, and we'll start doing our best to educate the public as we did in 2012.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Barley.
I would request that the information campaign, whatever we do, that the board be given an opportunity to look at that before it go out to the public. It's kind of a sensitive issue, has been in previous years, what we say and how we say it. I would at least like the courtesy of a presentation from staff about how you're going to market this to the public, because, you know, there are laws involved, and I know you're going to be careful. I still like to be prepared for it before it comes out.
Certainly, we'll be glad to do that. We'll probably try to utilize your, as much as they fill up so much, your off Tuesday meetings to try to give you an update, because we want to be able to try to roll this out as quickly.
Frankly, all I'm asking for is a memo.
Okay.
If I have an issue, I'll reply and say, I don't like this, could we please agenda it? I just want to know what you're going to do. I don't know what everybody else thinks. An email would be fine by me.
That's fine. We can do it that way.
Well, one of the things I do is as soon as I see whatever they're putting out, I comment.
We can do that, or we could do it when we do the individual commissioner briefings, one way or the other. But I guess if we do it in an email, then that way all the public gets to see it.
Mr. Leon, did you want to say something?
Hi, Tim Giuliani, President and CEO of the Gainesville Area Chamber of Commerce. I do want to address some of the comments that have been made tonight and over the last year and a half. Last night we actually convened a coalition of those we think are interested in supporting the measure as we are. You know, I'd be stating the obvious, that everyone feels that something needs to be done to address our transportation issues. And so we've taken that leadership role to help convene from the bike ped community, from the transit community, from SWAG representatives, from East Gainesville representatives, and try to carry that voice that the county commission won't be able to carry alone to the ballot box in November, so that this has a lot of support. And I can tell you, as not, you know, not my opinion, not opinions of different members of our board of directors, but over the last year and a half of convening many dialogues, many conversations, the point that keeps coming up, and the point that we're trying to communicate that we just think is very important, is, to your point, Commissioner Chestnut, earlier, that is very simple and straightforward, and folks know what they're voting on. And that's why we made the project list so key in the beginning. We thought it was important to build trust, and that's why we worked on the 8 years that this commission supported and has put forward. So on so many of these issues, we think the platform is being made. So we're 8 years on the tax. we're emphasizing road projects and addressing the backlog. Bike pedestrian projects and a multimodal approach is being used. We're not reducing lanes. There is a list of projects. And I think that this last piece that I hope we don't overlook is the Citizens Oversight Committee. And it's not, I want to see this happen. And leading the chamber and working economic development projects, we know it's critical for our future to address this so that it doesn't just mount to more of an issue. And it's not so much as something we want to draw a line in the sand in. It's something we feel is needed that the voters will want to feel comfortable with to support. And it's just something we continue to hear from our constituencies, from others that we pull together. And at the end of the day, this is, to your point, a very fair shot that has brought a lot of people to the table. And these last few decisions are key, and I think we should just stay in alignment of all the things we've worked on over the last year and a half. And I think a strong oversight committee and process like you've discussed tonight with a supermajority vote are directly in line with everything we've worked on to this point. And so we're just more asking to stay in line with where we've come from and not get hung up thinking that this is not an important issue, because every conversation we've had, dialogue, every input session, it is something that's important. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comments? Mr. Ward, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you. My name is Harvey Ward. I wanted to, I wasn't going to say anything about this. I just wanted to be here tonight because I think it's a really big deal for the county, and I'm glad to, I hope that it's moving forward. But after the last few comments, I wanted to point out to you, and I want to thank Commissioner Chestnut for his comments. You are the strong oversight board. You are answerable to the people of Alachua County, not some appointed board that will have no answerability to the people of Alachua County except through other layers. You are the ones that are going to be held accountable. You need to make the decisions and be out front on this. It's important to have the chamber along. It's important to have many groups along. I respect the chamber, but the chamber's not the only group that needs to come along on this. You five are the ones who are going to take the heat, at least initially. And then there's going to be at least one other person who's going to be a part of the mix. But the county commission is going to take the heat on this, and you have to be the strong oversight board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Or I guess anyone else? Ms. Martinez?
Good evening, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. Ernesto Martinez. Where does this oversight board issue stand? You spoke about it earlier, and then it sort of got forgotten, or else I fell asleep. One of my other questions is, how are we, the public, going to get any sense of assurance that this horrendous backlog of road repairs is going to be relieved in 8 years? You know, one of the classic problems whenever there's an issue with a road repair is, oh, that's county road. Oh, no, it's not a county road, it's a city road. You get the two-step, you get the shuffle. That's where the issue of trust arises. And it's not really always an issue of trust. As Mr. Byerly pointed out earlier, it's disagreement, which disagreements can lead to questions in trust, because why would you have a disagreement if there was trust present, involved, or is it questionable? I'll get off of that subject though, but the backlog, the last time I heard, was $50 million. Am I correct in that number?
500.
Actually, 380. 380 is what we hear from our staff.
Million.
Yes.
So in 8 years, we're going to tax ourselves to correct this problem?
No, not all of it, not in 8 years. We know that it's going to take more than that, but
And then you have this issue of extending it for 4 more years, which I think Mr. Hutchinson was questioning. If you're not, this tax is for 8 years, and you're making promises on a 12-year scale?
We're
No.
doing a quarter of
No.
our backlog with this with 8 years.
A quarter of the backlog within 8 years. Man,
Far behind.
that's a sad day in America. Thank you.
Ms. Martinez, you asked about where we stood on the Oversight Committee. After much deliberation, and I can see why you fell asleep, what we ended up doing was, I think that ultimately there's going to be, it sounds like there's going to be 3 members of the City Commission, 3 members, or not the Commission, but appointees by the City Commission, 3 appointees from the county, and then we referred to the League of Cities to ask them about what they felt was representation, and asked about residency requirements. So they're meeting in July. I called the chair of the League of Cities this afternoon and tried to give them a heads up what we were sending, and hopefully they would he would take the time to get in touch with the municipalities so they can know what to expect when they get in that meeting, so perhaps they can make a decision. So the Oversight Committee, I think everybody up here felt that it was imperative to have a Oversight Committee. Their duties and responsibilities will be essentially, as it stands right now, looking at how the money is spent and whether the projects it's going to the money that it said it was going to. And the other component of this was the independent audit issue, and how we're gonna do that. There will be an independent audit as required by state statute. All of our funds are independently audited. So then we will work out the finer points of that when it comes back. That does not have to be ready at the same time as the approval of this ordinance.
Well, Mr. Pinkerton, with all due respect, it bothers me to hear you say "I think."
Well, we hadn't taken the final vote, so that's, I have to say, I think. We've referred to.
So then the decision has not been
The
made.
decision about the Oversight Committee as far as the composition and ultimate responsibilities have not been made, but by the time that this ordinance is approved, by the time that it goes to ballot, all the language should be there so people will know what the Oversight Committee is going to consist of.
It should be. It sounds like you could possibly have the carriage before the horse.
I say should, I say think, words like that, because the final decision has not been made, and I'm not in the position to tell you that that the final result is there, because it isn't. It's certainly my intention by the time that this is going to be voted on that all those parameters will be established, and so people will know exactly what they're voting for.
I think we would like to hear that as a firm requirement or as a firm condition. Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martinez. Appreciate it. Any further comments? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to state the ordinance does require us to have an oversight committee.
Right. That will be there. The composition of it, as well as audit. The audit is required in the ordinance as well. So. Okay. So it's in there. The composition is not cemented yet. So. Any further comments, Mr. Hayes?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to reply to 2 issues that are actually very interrelated that I heard in the public comments. It really sounded like to me with the action that's in the motion with the supermajority requirement that in terms of what would be required to be in the ordinance, at least with the motion on the floor, that handles that. It really does sound like to me that the issues that the chamber is bringing up really chiefly pertains still to the Oversight Committee, and that's obviously we just stated as an action to be taken. And how that rolls into the question about the educational campaign, I'll just point out I went to the meeting last night at the chamber. The chamber can have Reggae Shack cater their meeting. They can print road signs and put them out. Those are things that the county with taxpayer funds are not going to do. So it's an important differentiation between the roles that staff can play in terms of an educational campaign and the private sector can play. So to the extent that in the Oversight Committee, if there's issues that can be sought out between the chamber and continue that conversation, I've already contacted the League of Cities. They are going to deal with the membership issue at their meeting in July. So that's something that we're going to continue to move forward with through this process. But it is an important differentiation. We've went to some of the meetings, and you guys were all there. Several of you were there last time in 2012. And it's hard, you know, when you have a meeting at the high school in Newberry at a dinner time hour, you know, and you can't bring anything, they can bring people out that won't come to a county staff or a county presentation. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Commissioner Baird.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everybody, for all the input that you have been providing. And we're almost there, and I understand for many different reasons that the Oversight Committee wouldn't be having any jurisdiction, any type of authority. But I think what I would like to see is a point of view, at least to have some form of a little bit of a checks and balances in terms of not voting for something in terms of what we can and what we can't do, not having any type of jurisdiction in terms of our authority, but to have some ability or some oversight and I guess one more layer of protection, or at least, again, I think it's not even oversight is a word, but at least awareness to have this point of view from this group so that way they're aware, everyone's aware of any type of possible change, but the only way to have that change is through one methodology, and that's just through the supermajority vote of the county commission. So if somehow we could put under the guidelines of what the oversight committee is intended to do, which is in addition to checks and balances in terms of the funding and the use of funds, to provide a point of view for any type of modification in the list. And at least, again, that might be a good way to compromise, or at least to have both the oversight but still have the 100% jurisdiction of the Board of County Commissioners, and that would just be my recommendation. Thank you.
Commissioner Barley.
I'm certainly ready to vote for this, but I just want to make I want to say one thing about the Oversight Committee. We haven't really had any specific discussions about that up until the last week or two. We've always known we were going to have one. It's an obviously intelligent thing to do. We have a model, which has always been in my mind, for how we would go about doing it. Wild Places, Public Spaces is the model we've used. It's worked well by all accounts. And one of the reasons that it's worked well is that the mission of that board is very narrowly focused. They're not asked for their opinion about things. They're not asked to weigh in on their policy beliefs or what they think the county ought to be doing. Their job is very objectively to look at what we're doing and make sure that the rules are being followed. That, in my view, is what instills confidence in the process. If you begin in any way to expand the role of that group to where they begin to be able to have opinions about things that the public may agree or disagree with, you're eroding confidence in the process. It becomes more of an advisory committee. It becomes more politicized and will be seen, correctly so, as an extension of the county commission because we appointed them. So I think the way to have the greatest amount of confidence on the part of the public is to very narrowly define the role of the Oversight Committee to making sure we're following the rules and nothing more. So I'm comfortable with what's on the floor. I think that's what I have understood we were going to do all along, and in the minds of, I think, most people in the public, that's what they think an Oversight Committee does. You don't make policy, you make sure the rules are being followed.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? There being none, all those in favor of the motion, everybody know what the motion?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I know what all the changes are.
Okay.
I have three things that I'm not on. I have three things that I noted on page 5 that that it would become the Board of County Commissioners may by supermajority vote. The remainder would stay the same. I have on page 6, section 8, that the Citizens Oversight Committee would review an independent audit which would be conducted in accordance with the specific state statute provision. And then I have the third one on the exhibit. I have the change in the title on the section that says other eligible projects if funding is available.
That's my
Those,
motion.
those are the three that I had written down.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and that, 4, and the title that we approved today.
Is that everything, Mike?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, come time to vote. Everybody in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion's unanimous.